Hello, and welcome to A Little Wine, A Little Time. I'm Derek. A Little Wine and A Little Time is a new project of my company, dliciousmedia. It's basically just me, my iPad, and a delicious glass of wine talking through some things. Most of the focus will be on politics. Politics through the lenses of media and online discussion. It's a pairing of topics and wine. So, over the last several years, I've spent a good amount of my time in discussion and debate with folks on Facebook. A good amount of this project is going to be discussion and digestion of online political discourse, and maybe some other random discussion from time to time as well. If you have anything you'd like to add, definitely feel free to discuss in the comments section. Please like, share, and subscribe to the Delicious Media YouTube channel. And again, I'd love to hear from you in the comments, whether you agree or disagree with what I have to say. Let's talk about it. If you find the content has value to you, you can kick me a few bucks via my Delicious Media Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal and help me grow my company. I would be very grateful. Links are available in the show notes. But okay, this episode's topic. What side of the political spectrum are the Nazis on, and are Democrats or Republicans the party of the KKK? Yeah. While I discuss this topic, I'll be enjoying a delicious glass of Rufino Modus Toscana. I've been told it's amazing. I have a feeling I'm going to crush the bottle while covering this topic. We'll talk more about the wine and why I chose to pair it with this episode later. Okay, so one thing we run into a lot. Actually, let me pour a little wine. It's been open and breathing. A little twist. Okay, so one thing we run into a lot in online political discussion and discourse is which side is associated with Nazis and groups like the KKK. The conversation has gotten even more intense with a lot of Trump's more recent rhetoric that literally echoes the language and rhetoric of Adolf Hitler. You also run into folks all over the internet who love to use the rhetoric that Democrats are the party of the Klan. The first time I came across this, I couldn't tell if the person I was talking to was sincerely confused or if they were knowingly incorrect and simply gaslighting. I wonder this every time I come across. I wonder this every time I come across it since then as well. So a lot of folks like to call Democrats the party of the Klan, and both sides often view the other side as Nazis or fascists. Who's right and who's wrong? Comparing folks to Nazis or groups like the Klan isn't something that should be done lightly or recklessly. They're both terrible groups. What I do love about this conversation is getting to break down some things via the political compass. I'm a political compass nerd, and I think it's something we should all study and understand better. It's a great way to conceptualize some things. As far as where I land on the compass, I self-identify as a leftist libertarian / democratic socialist. I know many might not understand what I mean by that, and I'll definitely get in depth about that concept in future episodes. So with both sides associating the other side with Nazis and the Klan, who is right and who is wrong? As I'm writing this, I'm watching a PBS Frontline documentary called Documenting Hate, Charlottesville. It's available on YouTube. I highly recommend checking it out. It gets in depth on some things I won't be covering in this episode. I'll link it in this episode's show notes. So let's start there. The Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia back in 2017. It was a gathering of alt-right, neo-Nazi, and white nationalists and other far-right groups. Folks on the right love to call the left Nazis. They cite the fact that Nazis have socialists in the name. Socialism is left-wing, so obviously the Nazis must be considered left-wing. Well, the official name of the North Korean government is the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Would anyone like to argue that North Korea is democratic? The German Nazis were about as socialist as the North Koreans are currently democratic, despite the names. It's like China. China is called communist, but when you really break them down, they're ultra-nationalist, ultra-conservative. They have a cult of personality, dear leader. They have a lot of wealth and income inequality, and they oppress certain minority groups. A lot of the same characteristics you'll find when you break down the German Nazis. When you break down China, they really seem to be much more right wing and not really in any way communist, despite being ruled by the Chinese Communist Party. They have a restore China to greatness thing going on, much like the German and Italian fascist movements in the 1930s. Make China great again, if you will. Make Germany great again, if you will. Restore the Roman Empire and make Italy great again, if you will. Can any of you argue otherwise? Can you find anything wrong with my breakdown and analysis here? Let me know in the comments. The German Nazis were ultra-conservative, ultra-nationalist, with a cult of personality dear leader. They were xenophobic and, of course, racist. They had socialists in the name, but fought actual socialists in the streets and rounded them up. They were anti-socialist, anti-communist, and anti-liberal democracy. They were anti-union, which, of course, is a right-wing thing. Folks on the left and actual socialists are pro-union. The Nazis collaborated with other right-wing groups during their rise and absorbed them as they consolidated power. They were very anti-left wing. They were right-wing by every important measure in quality. So that's that. We got that? So let's circle back to the Unite the Right rally. If folks on the right want to argue that Nazis are left-wing socialist, why is it that white supremacists and Nazi types show up in force at something called Unite the Right? Are the folks that say Nazis are left-wing confused, or are the literal Nazis confused? Shouldn't we believe the actual Nazis when it comes to what side they are on? When you run into folks online who seem confused about this, ask them these questions. Make them talk it through. Help them to understand this. We've got to unravel this stuff, whether it's people sincerely misunderstanding or whether it's people purposely being dishonest about it for propaganda purposes. Either way, it's an argument that needs to be ironed out and understood. Make the person you're discussing this with, who either is misunderstanding or being intentionally deceitful, rationalize it. Keep pounding and pressing with questions. Pick it apart and question it. That's how we unravel it. And don't just unravel it for the person you are directly talking to. Understand that there are others that might be confused. Understand that others that might be confused are possibly reading silently, and they can be helped to understand as well. So unite the right. White supremacists and Nazis clashed with counter-protesters. The president at the time, Donald Trump, said there were good people and bad people on each side. I'm paraphrasing, but that's the gist. I'm sorry. If you are on the side of Nazis, you are on the wrong side. If you are opposing Nazis, you are on the right side. There's no other way to see it. David Duke praised Donald Trump for his comments. I'm sourcing from the Frontline Documentary for that nugget. The documentary also features white supremacist who was there, saying that Trump, quote, opened up a door for them. They heard it as praise and praised his words. They heard it as validation. It's what we call a dog whistle. And it's still not even close to his more recent rhetoric that literally evokes Hitler. We will get into that a little more later. So far, things should be becoming very clear if you don't understand what side Nazis and white supremacists associate with, but we still got a lot to dive into. We're going to cover Marjorie Taylor Greene, Ron DeSantis, the KKK website, Fox News, and Trump's more recent language and rhetoric. So we've covered Nazis and white supremacists feeling at home on something called Unite the Right. Let's talk about a sitting member of Congress who is associated and flirted with white supremacists and Nazi types, Marjorie Taylor Greene, a sitting member of the United States House of Representatives, in 2022 spoke at a white nationalist, aka Nazi rally called the America First Political Action Conference. She took the stage after the organizer of the event, Nick Fuentes, spoke. In his speech, he made positive remarks regarding Vladimir Putin and Adolf Hitler. Now, of course, America First is a recycled Klan slogan and known dog whistle, but it sounds good to people who don't understand that and who don't know history. It's basically soft fascist rhetoric, if you will. Of course, it was used by the Trump campaign and the MAGA movement, and you can often hear it used in mainstream right-wing media like Fox News. So Marjorie Taylor Greene took the stage after Fuentes. She heard what he said. She claimed after that she didn't know who Fuentes was and she didn't know his beliefs. It's hard to buy that, but even if that's true, that's so dumb in itself. She heard what he had to say right before she took the stage, shook hands with him, then spoke herself. So we have a sitting member of Congress who is either too dumb to understand she is speaking at a Nazi rally, or she does know and she shares the beliefs. Those are the only two options. Which is it? Both should be disqualifying as far as holding the position she does. Who are her voters? Who votes for this? Do her voters all share Nazi beliefs, or do they just not pay attention? We need to press people on this. We need to ask these questions to all the folks on the right when we are talking with them. Press them on this. We need to press them with this all the time and as much as possible. They often defend it. Ask them this. Would you have attended that rally? Would you have spoken at that rally? Knowing what Fuentes said when he spoke, would you have followed him on stage? Press them. We can't have someone like this in our Congress. Whether she is simply dumb or whether she shares Fuentes' beliefs, either way is beyond bad. We've got to press this issue and impress this on people. But this is wild. Fuentes is part Mexican, but identifies as white because he believes his family has fully assimilated or something. Look it up. I mean, I guess Hitler was neither Aryan or German, right? It's like, wow, just wow. This is just one more clear example of the current right, MAGA, and Republican Party associating and flirting with Nazi types. And oh yeah, Fuentes was at the Unite the Right rally as well. He's had dinner with Trump and Mar-a-Lago and was present at the January 6th coup attempt in support of Trump. This stuff will drive you to drink, which is what I will do now. I will have a sip of wine. That's really good. That's really, really delicious. This wine came highly recommended. Okay, next. We've still got so much to get to. Let's talk a little bit about Ron DeSantis. I'm going to try and keep this brief. I'm going to read a little bit from a BBC article that I'll also link in this video show notes. Quoting from the BBC article, Nate Hochman, a speechwriter, posted a 68-second video from a pro-DeSantis account on social media over the weekend before quickly deleting it. The clip shows Mr. DeSantis superimposed with a Sunenrad, or Sunwheel. I think I'm saying that right. More from the BBC article. Quote, this video was posted on Saturday by an anonymously run account followed by several DeSantis staffers on X, formerly known as Twitter. The clip ends with the seal of Florida turning into a spinning Sunenrad superimposed with Mr. DeSantis' face and with a rifle-bearing soldier marching on either side. According to the Anti-Defamation League and Anti-Hate Monitor, the Sunenrad is an ancient European symbol that was appropriated by the Nazis in their attempt to invent and idealize Aryan Norse heritage. End quote. This is all from the BBC article, which is linked in the show notes. So my thoughts. People could say, well, the campaign fired him. Sure, the campaign fired him. But why was he hired in the first place? And why did someone who would make a video featuring DeSantis mixed with Nazi imagery want to work for the campaign in the first place? Is it maybe because MAGA types like DeSantis skirt the line and hold beliefs that aren't all that dissimilar from Nazi ideology? Let's think about that. Let's ask these questions. We all know his attacks on education in the state. This is really all the time I want to spend on this little piece of a right wing Republican campaign flirting with Nazi type stuff. Gonna sip some wine and move on. What should we talk about next? This one's kind of silly. Remember when CPAC had a stage shaped like a Odal ruin, a no Nazi symbol? CPAC on a stage shaped like a Nazi symbol. Who knows about this one? Could it have been a simple accident? Could it have just been coincidence? Who really knows? I've had right-wingers in online discussions swear it was a Democratic conspiracy to make Republicans look bad, and it was Democrats that secretly designed the stage. Okay, boomer. So the sneaky dumb libs pulled one over on you, huh? Some of this stuff is just ridiculous. At least we have delicious wine. Okay, moving on from that silly one. Here comes a serious unpacking. Have you ever been to the KKK website? I have. I'm probably on some government list because of it, but oh well, I was curious. Let me tell you, it's eye-opening. The KKKnationaloffice.com/welcome page really sheds some light on some things. It kind of reads like an episode of Hannity. It hits tons of right-wing talking points that you hear on mainstream right-wing media and talking points you'll hear from right-wingers all over the internet. The site has links to alt-right TV, so obviously they feel they are right-wing. It has a link to KKK radio. The content of the welcome page goes into things like changing the names of streets and schools and taking down monuments. Of course, from Confederate names and Confederate monuments. So like I mentioned early in this episode, you often run into folks online that like to go, oh, sorry. So like I mentioned earlier in this episode, you often run into folks online that like to go on about Democrats being the party of slavery and the KKK. If that's the case, then why does the right care about Confederate monuments? Those monuments were of Democrats. Wouldn't it be the Democrats who cared about the monuments if Confederates were Democrats? Ask folks these questions, because of course they were Democrats, but things changed. Ask folks these questions. Folks on the right often get defensive about being called racist, but when your beliefs are basically the same beliefs as the Klan, I mean, come on. Press them on this stuff. So the KKK welcome page mentions Trump, Biden, and George Soros by name. George Soros has become a boogeyman on the right. I may do a full episode on Soros. He's a complicated and important figure to understand. His name has also become code word for Jew among the anti-Semitic. Of course, folks on the right believe Soros is funding Antifa and such. I've been accused on multiple occasions in online discussion of being a paid agent of George Soros. I wish. I ask folks who make these accusations to help me find where I can sign up for such a thing. I ask them to help me find a link to the Soros cash. Of course, that's ridiculous and not a thing. It's wild how some minds work, though. It's very telling. They've had the Soros propaganda beaten into their heads by mainstream right-wing media. It's wild that the KKK and other mainstream right-wing media share this rhetoric. Here is a quote from the site that mentions Trump and Soros. Quote, "While many believe Donald Trump will save the day, the demographics are against us. Our people must develop a will to survive and understand the racial nature of the battle we are in. Those who hate our people in Western Christian civilization have the support of men like George Soros, pumping billions into schemes to reduce and replace white populations. This is genocide," end quote. So, that is their thoughts on Trump and Soros. It hints at the great replacement theory that you can find also echoed on mainstream right-wing media like Fox News. I know he is off air now, but the great replacement is rhetoric echoed by the likes of Tucker, Swanson, McNear, Carlson. John Oliver did a great piece on Tucker several years ago And it does an outstanding job displaying how Tucker basically rebrands and repackages white supremacy and blasts it to middle America in a softer, more palatable way. I'll link that in the show notes. And maybe one of the most important pieces of journalism of our time. I despise Tucker Carlson. Hashtag Tucker Carlson needs to smell better. And why does Tucker always look so confused? But back to the KKK site. They've changed a bit of language since I've last been to the site. It used to talk about the Hollywood elite and the Marxist agenda. Rhetoric you'll also hear on Fox and from right-wing folks on the internet. Everything is Marxist, Marxist, Marxist. It now says, quote, the entertainment industry backed by individuals with cultural Marxist agenda have waged an attack upon the consciousness of white Christians, end quote. Interesting. You can also click on their platform tab. I'll hit a few bullet points. America was founded as a Christian nation. It was founded as a white nation. It calls to withdraw from the UN and put America first. There's that familiar America First slogan. Stop all foreign aid immediately. Put troops on the Mexican border, which I believe is illegal, but feel free to fact check me on that. The list goes on, and most of the platform points are all, of course, aligned with a lot of the same things you'll hear from mainstream right-wing media and right-wing folks all over the place and on the internet. There was an interesting one that surprised me. They want to eliminate trade with countries that refuse to establish strict environmental laws. Who knew the Klan were environmentalists? You learn something new every day. Bravo. But I actually thought about it a little more, and we could maybe guess that there is some racist intent as far as what countries we'd be cutting off trade with. Who knows on that one? But yeah, cheers. The rest is a bunch of common right-wing talking points and racial stuff. I wish I could list them all, but you are welcome to check it out. I will not be linking the site in the show notes. Okay, so that covered a lot. Let's circle back to things as far as how it all relates to online discussion. You hear Republicans on the internet constantly using the rhetoric that Democrats are the party of the Klan. Of course, that is historically true. When the Klan was founded after the Civil War, it was founded by Democrats. Democrats were the party of the Klan. But after going to the website of the current KKK, it becomes very clear that they have a whole lot in common with the current Republican Party that resides on the right side of the current political spectrum. They align with the right on basically every single issue other than the environment, apparently. I was mind blown by that little nugget. The more you know. So when folks use the rhetoric of the Democrats being the party of the Klan, they are denying something we call the party flip. Calling it a flip is a little inaccurate. It's really more of an ebb and flow transition over time that led to the parties becoming basically inverted. It was ebb and flow shifts as far as economics and social issues over time. Flip oversimplifies it a little. There are plenty of good videos on YouTube that do a good job of explaining it. There were periods when both parties had a liberal and conservative wing. I won't get into the weeds on it, and I'll link some videos in the show notes that can explain it better than I can. But it's pretty clear when you evaluate groups like the Klan that their ideologies are very, very, very closely related to the current mainstream Republican Party and the radical MAGA movement that has taken it over. One simple way to understand and explain it is the Confederate flag. Back when the Klan was founded, Democrats were waving the Confederate flag. Now you see Republicans waving the Confederate flag. MAGA and the Klan share rhetoric like America First, along with a host of other rhetoric and ideology you'll hear on mainstream media like Fox News, and you'll hear from right-wing folks all over the internet. So when you come across one of these folks on the internet rambling about the Democrats being the party of the Klan, pound them back with all this. Share this with them. Whether they are sincerely confused or if they are being disingenuous, throw it all in their face. Blanket them with it. Soak them with it. Make it so they can't ignore it. We've got to unravel this nonsense. It creates a foundational misunderstanding of things. Let's assume they are genuinely confused. Maybe they truly believe that the current Democratic Party is aligned with the Klan and they believe that to be a bad thing. Make it clear that the ideology is incredibly aligned with the current Republican Party and what we hear from mainstream right-wing media. If they are being disingenuous, we need to challenge them. When they spew that stuff, others read it, and we need to be a counter voice to keep others that might be reading their nonsense from becoming confused. This is one of the arguments that can be mind-numbing, but it's an argument that needs to be unraveled. Let's breathe and take a swig of wine. So good. This is the first episode where I've had to top my glass off. Let's breathe, take a swig of wine. I've got one more topic. One more topic I want to touch on before we get into this wine I'm enjoying. Something that deserves and will get its own episode and will likely come up something that deserves its own episode and will likely come up in several episodes because it's so important. It's that Trump has been literally using the language and rhetoric of Hitler. He's been using it basically verbatim. Vermin. Hitler used that term many times in Mein Kampf, rooting out the Marxist communists and the radical left. This is the language, rhetoric, and then eventually the actions of Hitler. He rooted out and rounded up the left. Then he used the language, poisoning the blood of the country. This is the language and rhetoric of Hitler. There are only two examples, and these are only two examples, and like I said, it's worth a whole episode. The things about this rhetoric is that Trump knows what he's doing. Anyone who listens to him and has listened to Hitler knows what he's doing. But people that don't understand the language and the history are easily hooked and sucked in by it. I was talking about this subject with a guy on Facebook recently who was denying this reality. I was trying to talk to him about understanding the language and history. He tried to pull this "I'm a genius" card because he studied physics and astronomy. Smart people can be sucked in by this stuff too. But I told him physics and astronomy aren't going to help him understand this stuff. You have to study history and understand the language. We've got to talk about this with people and educate them. People I've discussed this with like to tell me that I'm being fed this stuff from the media. Sure, there is media talking about it, as they should be, but we don't need media to digest something like this for us. It's just listening and knowing the language. It's really that simple. And like I said, Trump knows the language he's using. He claims he's never read Mein Kampf, and I believe that because he doesn't read, but I know he's getting it from somewhere. The language is almost verbatim. This is more than flirting with Nazi type stuff. This is straight Nazi type stuff, and we've got to shout about it. The language is dehumanizing, and dehumanizing is how you condition people to commit genocide. We've got to talk about this, and online is where we've got to shout about it. We have got to hammer it home and get as many people to understand it as possible. Why online? Because Fox and other mainstream right-wing media aren't going to call it out. They share a lot of the fascist rhetoric themselves. Folks who need to understand this stuff aren't going to tune in to MSNBC and have it broken down for them. We can reach them online. We can reach out to them online. We have got to reach out and get through to them. We have a handful of months for as many people as possible to get the message. Man, I'm going to crush this bottle of wine. This stuff is stressful. I really hope I've laid things out that simply explain the association between Nazis, the KKK, and the radical right-wing MAGA movement. Let me know in the comments. Let me know if I've missed anything or if there's anything that needs more explaining. But now I'm ready to talk about this wine after a quick message. If you're watching and listening to this one, I will have already released at least a few other episodes. Please like, subscribe, and share. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. And if you find my content has some value, you can kick me a few bucks via my Delicious Media Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal. Links are in the show notes. It's kind of a start of a crowdfunding type deal until I can come up with a Patreon. But now let's talk about this wine I'm enjoying. I paired this episode with a delicious glass of Rufino Modus Toscana. Like I've mentioned, it came highly recommended. And it is delicious. It's a blend of Cab Sauv, Merlot, and Sangiovese. According to the fantastic wine app Vivino, this wine has notes of oak, tobacco, vanilla, blackberry plum, leather, earthiness, and smoke. I definitely get that earthiness and smoke. Definitely the tobacco, the vanilla. Here are some of the winemaker's notes. Ruby red color, intense and intriguing on the nose. Initial aromas of mature red and black fruits such as cherries, plums, and small blackberries. Typical of a Sangiovese, are complemented by hints of spices, sweet tobacco, and refined balsamic notes. Full-bodied with a modern super Tuscan style, rich with silky tannins and flavors of mature blackberry, fruit, and cocoa. Vibrant, fresh fruits. Yes. Delicious. I highly recommend this wine and the Vivino wine app. Just for transparency, neither Vivino or this wine are sponsors. So why did I pair this wine with this episode? Mainly, I chose it because of the compass. The compass on the bottle. On the label. And this was the first episode that touches on the political compass. The political compass is a tool we can use to conceptualize different ideologies and ways of thinking. I hope this episode clears up where groups like Nazis and the KKK fall on the political compass. It's obviously on the right. When we break them down, it becomes clear that they align with the right. Currently, they align very closely with the mainstream of the MAGA movement that has taken over the right and the Republican Party. We need to understand this and how dangerous this is. It's far from where our country should be and is toxic to our political discourse. We need to grasp this not only via the political compass, but also via our moral compasses. These ideologies are immoral. They have no place in our political discourse and no place in the political discourse of the United States of America. We need to push back on it as much as possible. Let's use our compasses. So that's that, episode 3. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you check out other episodes and discussions. That is all for now. Until next time, stay well, be well, peace, love, delicious wine. Cheers. Peace.